All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. We can start with attendance.
Chair Eagleson Cheslowich,
Here.
Vice Chair Roman,
Present.
Board Member Pease,
Here.
Board Member Ulitskis,
Here.
Board Member Willis.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay. And welcome to our new board member. Wonderful to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Do we have any agenda changes?
No agenda changes.
Okay. And do we have any public comment on items not on the agenda?
I have no request to speak.
Okay. Then shall we just move into, do we want to do the like the staff report at this point, or do you want to schedule at the end? Schedule at the end. Great. Okay, let's move on to the staff report then for today's agenda item.
Well, that technically would be an agenda change, so yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, so we have our first item. I guess do you have a?
I was just going to say that would be an agenda change, so perhaps we should start with the meeting schedule.
You do want, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Okay, sorry, I thought
Thank
you were meaning it the other way around. Okay, schedule then.
Bear with me while I share my screen.
Okay.
All right. Well, good morning. I'm Stephen Schweitzer, the Historic Preservation Planner. Agenda item 1 here, city official reports. So we have 3 meetings remaining for this year, including the one that we're at today. October 10th, this meeting is the first meeting with the new quorum and the new board member, Geddes Ulakis. Excuse my pronunciation of your name. So welcome. And we have tentatively scheduled on November 14th elections of the new chair and vice chair and a potential discussion of the historical review board award program discussion build out. So some other updates. The Mills Act letter that we had discussed at the retreat was sent to City Council on September 20th. That was sent via email and was added during the public comment packet as well. We have a forthcoming HRB work plan presentation to City Council on October 21st. So the chair will be presenting that as well as staff with the other boards and commissions under the umbrella of planning and development services. And just some minor updates here. We do have, or should I say we received 4 historic rehabilitation pre-applications. So those will be coming forward in either at the end of this year or in the following year for your review. And that concludes my official report. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to entertain those.
Stephen, did the HRB work plan presentation to City Council date change? I thought it was on the 16th when we talked about it on Monday.
So it had previously been scheduled and rescheduled. So the official date is the 21st. So.
Yes, yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to jump in and introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Armour. I'm the new Assistant Director for the department. And I'm just sitting in here with Stephen as his side seat driver. But as you've seen, he's quite great with all things historic. And I'm just looking forward to listening in and learning from this group. My most recent experience did include working with the Historic Resources Board for the town of Los Gatos. So I love being involved, though I do not have nearly the experience that Amy French did, but I'm excited to be stepping in and joining you this morning.
Thank you so much. Welcome to you too. Okay. Are there any other comments, questions about the schedule? All set? Okay. So now let's move on to today's item.
All right. So this is a major historical resources board project located at 1023 Forest Ave. So this includes rehabilitation as well as restoration. So this property is located in the single-family residential district as well as the Crescent Park neighborhood. Little background here on the construction of the property. It was built in 1896 by the builder M.P. Madison and was designed by the architect Charles H. Barrett. In 1906, there was an earthquake that had damaged the Belvedere pictured in the left photo on the right end of the structure, as well as the brick chimneys that altered the architectural form of the structure and what today is pictured on the right. So this was built in 1896 for the Herzingers for around $6,500. Following that, the property had changed hands a few times, and in 1954, there was a 5-lot subdivision that significantly decreased the lot size of the property to what is today. The house was identified in the 1979 Beach and Bohulgeson survey, later categorized as a Category 2, a major building on the city's inventory. In 2002, it earned a Past Spirit of the Place award, and throughout the years, it has sustained some minor renovations, most notably in 2017, a kitchen remodel that changed and added some Palladian windows to that facade pictured on the screen. It is constructed in the Queen Anne architectural style. So this was popular from 1880 to 1910, and of course constructed outside of that period. But some typical features of this architectural style are an abundance of decorative elements, cross gables, asymmetrical facade, round and polygonal corner towers or turrets, and decorative spindle work on porches and gable trim. So going into the actual proposal here, so I'll walk you through kind of the cardinal, should I say, coordinates of the house and the changes to each of the facades from the plan set. So proposed on the south elevation, this is the one abutting Forest Ave. This would be categorized what's detailed in the staff report as restoration and highlighted on the screen in yellow. So this would include the restoration of the chimneys for their original shape and architectural form with their arched caps, as well as the restoration of the Belvedere. So this is a 3rd-story porch, and it includes some turned woodwork and some nice architectural features on the roof as detailed in the staff report. So the material for the roof is going to be proposed metal versus the composition shingle on the rest of the structure. And here is a rendering of that just for a little bit more context. And moving on to the western elevation. So this would be falling under the category of what's detailed in the staff report for rehabilitation. So this includes the replacement, if you will, or proposed new windows for the kitchen and, removing those Palladian windows that are a little uncharacteristic for the structure, as well as the introduction of a skylight. And you can see the chimneys in this elevation as well. And for a rendering, here we go. If we go to the northern elevation, so this is the rear yard. There are some changes proposed here. As noted on the other elevation, a new low-profile skylight, as well as changing out some of the existing aluminum windows on that 3rd floor to some more appropriate windows on that dormer. And there is going to be an introduction of a deck that you probably noticed at the previous rendering at the rear. So in the construction of that, there's going to be a switch, if you will, of the windows and a proposed door. So those are part of that 2017 kitchen remodel. So making it a little bit more characteristic for the structure. And the railings are distinct from the ones on the front of the structure. So they're not trying to invoke any false sense of history. So they blend in staff's opinion in a compatible manner. And here is that rendering, including some of the proposed landscaping and hardscaping elements. So those are discussed in some further slides. Moving on to the eastern elevation, we can see the Belvedere again, as well as a skylight that's proposed and the reconfiguration of a stairs off of the rear porch area. And there is a rendering of that. And to discuss some of the other items. So as you probably have noticed in some of the elevations, there is a proposed wrought iron gate, as well as a pedestrian gate, a garage, and a proposed deck. So some further details on those. And this front entry gate would be wrought iron, and that would be fronting Forest Ave. So as detailed in the staff report, staff is recommending that the board find the application consistent with the standards of review in the municipal code, as well as the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation and restoration. There are some alternative actions that the board may choose to, say, continue the discussion of the project to a date certain with a specific direction to staff or the applicant, as well as recommend that the application is not consistent with the standards of review. And it should be noted that the board should specify which standards are of concern, if that be the action the board may choose. And with that, I can entertain any further questions and discussion of the board.
Great, thank you so much. I did want to make a disclosure regarding this property. I have actually visited the site and read the real estate disclosure packet, so I have prior familiarity with the site. I don't know if any other board members have disclosures they'd like to share at this point.
Yes, I would like to disclose that I live in the Crescent Park neighborhood, so I'm familiar with this house. It is 0.4 miles from my residence, but it is in my neighborhood.
Anyone else? Okay. Are there any board questions on the staff report?
I have one question. I wanted to ask or clarify, is the composite shingle roof being replaced?
So that is not proposed in this application. That was captured in a building permit prior to submittal of this application. So the roof is currently, or should I be constructing in composite shingle? So that's not part of this application.
Okay, so it is being replaced in the building permit, but it's not for consideration with the historic application.
Correct. The roof material for the rest of the structure is not part of this application or for consideration of the board today.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
And if I may, through the chair, just a minor clarification on that. The roof material on the Belvedere would be under the purview of the board today for consistency.
Then if there are no other additional, sure.
Sorry, one last question, which is I noted on the rendering that the frieze above the columns on the Belvedere, it seemed to have sort of a metallic or copperish like image on the rendering, and I'm just wondering, is it proposed as a metal frieze?
Believe that during the applicant's presentation, the architect can speak a little bit more about some of the material choices and perhaps address that question for you as well.
Okay, thank you.
Then let's move on to the applicant presentation.
Hello. My name is Jonathan Barbero. I'm the homeowner, and I thought I would, if you guys can hear me, tell you a little bit about how I came to own the home and how we brought our presentation to you today. And then I'll hand it over to Lee to get into the details. So I grew up in Ohio, Lakewood, Ohio, and my father was an architect, and he was a city planner for the town I grew up in. And my mother was an art historian. And when I was a child, they restored an 1890s Victorian home that I ended up growing up in. I spent my whole life in that house. And it left quite an impression on me. I really loved growing up in there and came to appreciate all of its Victorian details, like its pocket doors and maid staircases and bay windows. And I always loved that house and came to appreciate Victorian architecture. And it helped with my parents' credentials that they had really put a lot of time and energy in trying to restore that house the right way. And fast forward to 2002, I moved out to the Bay Area to work for Apple. And I was fortunate enough to be able to retire in 2018, around the time our daughter was born. And in that time, my wife had received a fellowship in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. And we moved out there so she could complete her medical degree in pulmonology. And by the end of 2021, at the height of the pandemic, we were looking to move back to the Bay Area. My wife had received a full-time offer from Kaiser in Santa Clara in the ICU. And we knew we wanted to move back. I'd always loved the Bay Area. It's been here for almost 20 years. And so we started looking for homes, mostly in the South Bay. But being 2021, interest rates were almost zero, and homes in Palo Alto and the whole Bay Area were selling in 24 hours. And we were in Washington, D.C., trying to buy a home out here, which was almost impossible. However, there was one home that we found in Palo Alto that had been on the market for months and months and was not moving. And it was a blessing for us because it actually afforded us the ability to come out and see it. And that's the home that we're here to talk about today at 1023 Forest. It was clear why the house hadn't sold right away. Much of the house, in fact, most of it was still in original condition from 1896. So the house was sitting on a brick foundation that had survived the 1906 San Francisco earthquake that took down the Belvedere and the chimneys. That foundation was leaking, so the basement would take on water during the winter. The attic had been converted to an apartment in the 70s. It still had shag carpet and a family of rats that were living up there. And then the previous owners had attempted to flip the house in 2017 and had done some non-historic work on the house. And I think that for many prospective home buyers, it was probably too much to handle. But when I walked through the house with my wife, it took me right back to my childhood. Seeing the pocket doors, all the chimneys, the maid staircase again, I just fell in love with it. My wife did too. And we could see the potential throughout the house for a restoration. I was really excited about it. But we knew that because the house was Category 2, historic, and coming from my parents, my father being a city planner, we knew that we needed an architect to help guide us through the rehabilitation of this property. So we reached out initially to the Palo Alto Stanford Heritage Society and asking if they knew of anyone that could help us guide through. And that's how we came in contact with Lee. And so Lee's been terrific in helping us guide our planning process from the very beginning, day one. Lee went through the house with us. And so we really love the house, and we wanted to do it right from day one. We hired Lee, and then we found a contractor named Jim Pardon, who's done numerous historic restorations throughout the Bay Area over his long career. We retained a firm out of Mill Valley named Stroudwater Design to help us do the hardscapes and the gates in a historically appropriate manner. We hired Bob Buchter out of San Francisco to help develop the color scheme that you're going to see later. Bob has his name on probably 75% of the homes in San Francisco. So he came down and consulted with us. And we're also working with the Blue Ox Mill in Eureka to mill original redwood replacement parts for a lot of the dry rotted parts of the house, including the gutters. So we're really excited to present our vision to you today for the home and to show you how much time and energy that we put into this, that we really care about the house, we're really in love with it, and I hope that we can get your thoughts and feedback on the proposal. And I'll hand it over to Lee to get into the technical details. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. My name is Lee Lippert. I'm the project architect. I'm in private practice with my wife, Carol, under the aegis of Lippert and Lippert Design. We've been in practice together for nearly 40 years. It's really a genuine honor to bring this beautiful house before you today. This is probably one of the most significant historic homes in Palo Alto to come before this board. Further, the project represents a unique opportunity to restore the home to a semblance of its former architectural splendor, which I think is particularly important. I think Jonathan talked about how he and his wife came here. One of the reasons that they loved this house so much was because of the turrets and the round rooms in the house, bracketing the house, and you can see them on the left and right side of the house. This is the way the house looks today.
I
Am I
think we're
sharing?
not able to see the images.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me figure out how to do that. Bear with me for a second. There we go.
That's working. Thank you.
So this is the way the house looks currently with the turrets. The thing that's unique about this house and the round windows is that mostly when round rooms are made in Victorians, you often see that the windows are straight, flat panels. There were some problems with the windows. The windows, as you know, historic windows stick. The upper sashes have been painted shut. Not only that, some of the glass panels had been replaced with plexiglass, which both crazed and cracked. And so the first thing that we did in this house was actually to start restoring these windows by replacing the plexi panels with new glass lights that were fabricated in Los Angeles. In addition to that, we had all the windows repaired, the sash cables and all of the counterweights. We had the top sashes unstuck so that the windows work perfectly. Shortly afterwards, the owners requested we look at re-roofing the house and asked if it would be possible to add insulation to make the house more energy efficient. It was at this point we discovered that the 2x4 rafters wouldn't have the depth to add substantive insulation, and that would make a difference. And there was already fiberglass pad insulation previously added. Further, the existing 2x4 rafters at 32 inches on center were significantly overspan. We had 5 structural engineers look at the house, 4 of which threw up their hands and actually ran screaming from the house. The challenge was the roof needed to be reinforced with new 2x8 rafters at 16 inches on center, along with a solid substrate. This alone would triple the weight of the roof. This meant that the increased dead loads of the heavier roof would need to be substantially stabilized by new shear panels. But this became even more of a problem as there wasn't a clear path to get those shear panels down to the basement, to the foundation. There weren't stacking walls. And in addition to that, it isn't apparent, but the house actually wedding cakes. It actually steps in the higher up you go. And the back end of the house, the rear end of the house actually overhangs. So again, how do you introduce shear panels from the roof all the way down? This would really create eccentric seismic resistance, which could be more detrimental to the house in the case of an earthquake. So what we did was we also introduced steel brace frames into portions of the house. And we actually have two steel moment frames that go from the foundation all the way up. At this point, the shear walls and moment frame only needed to be attached to the foundation. And it was at that point we were planning to just simply replace portions of the foundation. But the house is in a flood zone. And so in the rains, water was just pouring in and flooding the basement. It was an unreinforced masonry basement. So at this point, Jonathan and Irina said, well, let's get the basement replaced. And so what we have now is a brand new mat slab with stem wall, with concrete stem walls. These are the curved windows. You can see in the center of the picture, that's actually frosted plexiglass. You can see the putty around the perimeter of the window. It was very messy. We also had curved screens made for those windows, a very difficult process because insect screens, they want to just go flat. And we figured out how to actually get the screens to curve with the windows. There was only one historic screen for the house. We used that as our pattern for making all the new screen windows. And then just to make sure you could see the beauty of the house, we used black screen so that you don't see you don't see the screen itself. During our forensic investigation, we discovered photographs of the home taken prior to 1906. This is from the Palo Alto Times. This was in 1902. This was prior to the Great San Francisco earthquake. In the historic photograph, one can observe there was a beautiful belvedere, a bell-shaped roof on the southeast corner of the facade. The term belvedere is an open porch or open tower on the upper floor of a Victorian home. We found this architectural term visually described on page 97 of Identifying American Architecture, a pictorial guide to styles and terms, 1600 to 1945 by John Bloomson. Belvedere means a summer house or open sided gallery, usually at top roof level, commanding a fine view. The word translates from 16th century Italian. The word bel meaning beautiful, and vedere meaning to see, literally a beautiful view. The original belvedere was connected to the third level by way of a breezeway, a roofed outdoor passage. I think we can all agree that the original belvedere was essential to the architectural style of the historic home. Upon closer inspection, you can see that there are two arch-capped chimneys. We believe these chimneys collapsed in the 1906 earthquake. There was an iron rod connecting the belvedere roof to one of the chimneys, and we believe that as the front chimney collapsed, it just jerked and pulled the belvedere right off the roof. You can see the original chimney is a smoother brick. It has visible brick joints there.
Apologies. It is about time. I think we would like to hear the remainder of the presentation. So can we extend the applicant presentation by another 5 minutes? Is that any concerns? Okay, let's do that.
Thank you very much. So now that the seismic strengthening in the basement is all done and et cetera, it's our intention to look at rebuilding the chimneys and doing that using thin brick. We would take down the current brick chimneys, which are not original to the house. This would be done with a metal flue liner and a probably steel box, and that would be clad in thin brick that would replicate the existing brick pattern, as well as trying to recreate the arches on the top. There was a chimney on the west side of the house that also was gone. They had replaced that with an asbestos flue liner, and there's no sign of the asbestos flue liner. My guess is that it was taken out prior to the house being sold because of the nature of asbestos as being a hazardous material. If you look, this is a close-up of the Belvedere. It's our intention to try to recreate the columns that you see on the Belvedere using the columns on the second-story porch. Those closely approximate in terms of the design and turning of the wood so that we can recreate those columns almost exactly the way they were. This would be fabricated from hollow steel. It would be basically steel tubes. And then that gives you an idea of the Belvedere and the deck. What you're looking at here is that those steel tubes would be placed between the windows, and they would be anchored to the floor joists that go back into the house. And that's how we plan on securing it. This gives you an idea as to how those steel tubes would then attach to the new Belvedere roof. The intent is that those columns would actually be hollow. They would clad the steel posts or columns that would be supporting the Belvedere. This is something very similar as to how it was done in another historic house. And then they're put together in two halves and then sealed and painted. In this case, we would make a mold of the remaining columns on the porch and fabricate those out of fiberglass. There would be two parts. They would basically encase the steel tube, and then again, it would be painted, and for all practical purposes, it would look like the original turned columns. It's not apparent, but on some of the existing columns, the actual capitals, the Scamuzzi capitals, are actually fiberglass, and once they're painted, you can't tell. So that the columns don't feel hollow, we would probably fill them with foam so that you can knock on it and it would actually sound like wood. This is how we propose on fabricating the Belvedere. What you're looking at here is from Mystic, Connecticut. This is sitting in the, how should we say, the utility yard of the Mystic Museum. And The idea is that all of the roof rafters are actually cut from whole timber, whole pieces of wood. There's an S curve cut into those. And then it's anchored to the plate that goes around the Belvedere. So in this case, we'd use,
Apologies. So we're at time again. And I'm also noticing, if I'm reading this correctly, there are another 30 slides remaining.
I can get through these quickly.
Okay. I think we can extend for another 5 minutes. I do want to be mindful of time because we do, with other applicants as well, have the time limit enforced. So,
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So these would probably be fabricated by 10-foot long by 16-inch LVLs. The S curve would be cut. They'd be assembled in a bell-shaped form. This shows what it would appear like. They'd be arranged in a wagon wheel fashion. There'd be a steel connecting, a steel connector at the top, some sort of a ring. And then along the perimeter, these are spaced at 20 inches on center. This will allow us to secure the roof panels to it. And so this is this simulates what the fabricated roof panels would be like. And then the gutters would be affixed and they would be fabricated, based on the other gutters that we're replacing already on the house. That's really the end of my presentation. The other images are all just our submission material in case you have questions.
Okay. Thank you.
And if I may, through the chair, I did take a look at the plan, so I do have an answer. So for that Vitruvian scroll frieze, that would be plaster and it would be painted. So to answer your question.
Thank you.
Are there other board questions for the applicant? Okay, no questions, then I'll open it up to discussion.
Yay! We were so happy you found this house. And it's just so nice to see somebody being so responsive to what's there and what's worth saving. And, it's just lovely. So I am delighted with this project. Yeah, can't say anymore. I'm just really thrilled. But I also would like to say, Lee, it sounds like you guys have found some really wonderful sources, and I'm hoping maybe Past Heritage would share some of those resources on their website so that other people looking to reproduce millwork or historic colors would have that available to them. I think that you've done a lot of work and it would be nice to share it. So I'm hoping that could happen.
I would like to echo Caroline's comments. This is so exciting. And like I said, I live in Crescent Park and I walk my dog past this house regularly. And my fear when a historic house changes hands is always like, oh no, like what's coming next? What's about to happen? And when I saw the I dread the proposed project sign in front, I was like, oh no, what are they going to do to this house? And then I read it more closely and I was like, oh, this is new. This is delightful. This is different, that they're actually going to restore it to its splendor that we see here in the picture. So I'm just very grateful to you and your wife for being wonderful stewards of this house. It deserves a family that lives in it. Like I see your kids playing in the yard. It's very alive and joyful. And on this block, there have been there were 3 houses within the last 4 years, because I've lived in the neighborhood for 4 years. Historic houses, not like this one. There's 2 small cottages and then kind of a larger early 20th century home, and they've all been demolished for new construction. So this is really, really encouraging to see this house on the block, the most stately one. It stands in stark contrast to what I call the Oppenheimer house, which is down the street at like 1043, I think, that I absolutely can't stand. So this is wonderful. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Great way to start our new year as the board.
Okay. I just want to say that I know from experience, all these challenges that you talked about, the brick foundation, the seismic upgrades, dealing with, overspanned structures, these are not easy things to address. And they do scare a lot of people. You've done it brilliantly. And I really hope this example shows and inspires more people to not be afraid and to put in the time and have the passion that you guys have had. So thank you.
I also, excuse me, I would also like to thank you. This is clearly very thoughtfully done. It's wonderful to see a home like this restored. I appreciate your explanation and discussion of the choice of metal roofing materials for the Belvedere. And I also think it's wonderful that you found and are conserving an original stained glass window that had been concealed. That's really fantastic to see. Oh, you got
We found it hiding in the walls. It was boarded up.
That's
You
so.
can see it on the facade.
Yeah,
Right there on the second floor under the Belvedere.
That's like my
And,
dream. That's like historic house nerd owner's dream.
yeah.
It was-
I think
it
we
was-
all want that.
Really excited. Lee has a picture of it. So it's in process of being restored right now.
Really
This
cool.
is an in-process photo.
That's wonderful. Yeah. So thank you so much for the attention you're giving to this home, for caring for it so wonderfully. Really appreciate it.
Well, I don't want to be left out. I agree with all that.
Anything else? If not, I'd like to move that this project at 1023 Forest is compliant with the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic rehabilitation.
I second the motion.
And a vote? Oh,
Before you make your, take your vote, I just have one other comment I'd like to share with you. This is a dual application. We're also going forward for an HIE. We are way over the maximum allowable floor area. But there are provisions of the Palo Alto Municipal Code that allow for the 104 square feet for the Belvedere, which back when the house was built, it was not considered floor area. And then also we would like 230 square feet for a garage, single car garage. Actually, when the house was built, everything was horse and carriage. The automobile era had not really begun, so garages were not required. The carriage house or the stable for the house was actually located on one of the other properties that when it was subdivided. So what's important here is that when you are going through and making your motion, it really needs to be in support of the HIE. Otherwise, we don't get those additional floor areas. It allows for historic homes to have bonus floor area. We're asking for a total of 334 square feet.
can you provide guidance?
Yes, and if I may, so two things, I can provide guidance, and also I believe that we should have public comment on this as well.
Oh, yes, apologies.
So,
Yeah,
whichever one you would like to do.
let's go with the public
okay.
comment and then we'll get some guidance
Okay.
on the HIE.
Great. Sounds great.
Is there public comment on this item?
I have no comments.
Okay.
All right. So as for the HIE, so the staff report did touch on that. So this is being processed concurrently with staff. So the purview of the board today is just reviewing the application for consistency with the Secretary of Interior standards. So that can inform the findings for the home improvement exception, the HIE, but the board will not be, asked or tasked with, say, the review of making those findings for the HIE. That's a separate process. So echoing, the client's or applicant's architect, should I say, definitely having the recommendation that the application is consistent will hold merit for making those findings, for staff to make those findings. So just a little distinction there to be made.
Okay. So no modification to the amendment, the current amendment is necessary.
The motion as stands would be correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we can vote.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Ulinskis,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Chair Eagleson Chesovich.
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0.
all right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So our next item is the approval of minutes from the July 11th and then August 8th meetings. Are there any comments? Let's start with the July 11th meetings. Are there any comments on those meeting minutes? All set. I'd like to move to approve the minutes from the July 11th, 2024 Historic Resources Board meeting.
Second.
And can we just voice vote this one? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. And then let's look at the minutes from the August 8th meeting. Are there any questions, corrections? Nope, all set. Okay. I'd like to move to approve the minutes from the August 8th, 2024 Historic Resources Board meeting. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Then are there additional staff announcements?
No additional announcements at this time.
No, okay. Any board member discussion items? Yeah.
So the one thing that struck me about Forest, I don't know how many of you went and looked at it, but it is not a place where the utilities have been undergrounded, and it is a place where they are incredibly messy. Once you get to Middlefield, it's all cleaned up, it's downtown, it's beautiful. And I think I think we need to make a plea with utilities to, maybe we should assess which areas we really care about that haven't been undergrounded and aren't necessarily in the current plans to underground. But this one in particular, it's under construction. There's stuff all over the place, but you look at that pole and there's so much stuff on it going this way, that way, and the other place. And Forest is a fairly wide street at that point. So it really highlights it. And it is not the only pole. Every pole in that block is just awful. And because we do own our own utilities, we should have some control here. We're not dependent on PG&E for this one, although they might be coming down that line. I don't really know. But I think we should figure out a way to help our historic districts by cleaning them up utility-wise. And that particular property just made it horrifically obvious.
Any other comments and announcements from the board? Yeah, sure.
So Commissioner Willis, you brought that to light, but what would you propose to forward that? Are you asking staff to do it, or are you asking that potentially it be considered? as a letter to utilities or to council?
I sort of feel like the first step is for us to identify, I mean, that one's particularly obvious, and maybe it's a perfectly logical place to start. But I think as a board, if I can't really believe that's the only place that looks awful. So,
I
you
mean,
know,
I
and
appreciate that you identified that, but I was wondering,
Yeah.
is there going to be any action and what would you propose?
I hope
as
so.
such?
I would sort of like to maybe get together with Steve and maybe somebody from utilities and see what the best approach would be, because I know it's kind of a big ask. This is not a cheap ask. So I'm not feeling really impatient about it because, nobody's going to go digging up forest anytime soon to put those things underground. But I feel like it's wrong of us to ignore it. So Steve, what do you think? Can we have a little get together with somebody from utilities and sort of discuss maybe a plan for it?
If I may, through the chair. So staff can definitely investigate that, but as for confirmation in the meeting today, I don't believe I can provide you an affirmative answer, but we definitely can investigate that. And I would encourage potentially scheduling that or having that as a discussion topic at an additional meeting to further investigate what can be done regarding that.
That sounds good. Maybe we can agendize that for a future meeting.
Yeah, I would definitely like to. I don't want to see it fall off the thing, but I know that, I hadn't really thought about it in a while. I resigned the wires in front of my historic house. But that one is so prominent and they're doing such a lovely job. I just, and it's a nice block, that block of, I know a lot of it's been replaced, but, it's still a very prominent block in town. So I'm just hopeful we can sort of plod along on that one and maybe get something done.
Okay, thanks. Anything else? Right, then I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
There, we okay? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank
Aye.
you.